We're getting near the end of my series on the London system now, and this is video number 6. And in this video, let's just move to maybe a critical moment and one of the rules I really want you guys to remember from this particular video. And we're going to dive into the position after Black has just played the move Bishop G4 on move 7. Now, with the setup you see here, Black has allowed us to play E4 and D4. And this resembles a kind of perk-like structure. And later on, we'll have a look how we get to this particular position. But a couple of rules I want you to remember is try to stop Black from playing E5. This is rule number 1. And with the move Bishop G4, you can see that Black is trying to gain control of the E5 square by pressurizing the knight on F3. The knight on F3 is controlling that square at the moment. So the first thing we want to do is try and stop Black from playing this move E5. So in this particular game, White played a very clever move now, Queen to E3. And this is a very clever move because it releases our rook against the Black Queen. So if Black tries E5, we simply capture on E5 and we'll win a pawn. We've stopped E5 from being played. And this game that we're going to have a look at in more detail in a second between Mamedov and Grishchuk continued knight to D7, Black fighting for the E5 move. He will eventually get it in, but we're going to make it as difficult as possible for him to do that. How do we stop him again? Bishop G5. And this move is a very crafty move because it misplaces the queen. And after Queen E8, the move played by Grishchuk, we now come to the second rule I want you to remember, and that is swap off dark square bishops. This gives you a great attacking chance. And the last thing, when Black does play E5, I think the move we should aim to play against this move is always at some point pawn takes E5. And these are really the 3 basic rules of this video I want you to learn. But now for premium viewers on chess.com and subscribers, we'll have a look at how we got to this position and talk about things in more detail. So let's go back to move 1 now. So this is now, like I say, the penultimate video in the London system. So you're getting near completion. You'll be ready to play this very exciting and interesting opening, perfect opening for lazy people, very soon. And in this video, we're concentrating on the setup after D4, knight to F6, and we're always playing bishop to F4 in these positions, and now G6. So again, like the previous video, we're sticking with setups where Black tries like the King's Indian defense, the Grunfeld defense, openings like this. What is the rule you should remember after G6? Well, the rule that I'm creating is after G6, we go knight to C3. We don't play this against other moves, only against G6. And now what we're really concentrating on is if Black allows us to play the move E4. In the last videos, we looked at D5 here, which I think is a superior move. I think D5 is superior because it cuts across our intended plan. But a lot of players on the Black side, I find this is a very common mistake. They won't be looking at your moves and they'll be playing on autopilot, meaning they're not really thinking about what you're doing and they'll allow you to get your setup in. And if your opponent does play an autopilot, well, you can see Grishchuk, one of the best players in the world, allows this setup from White and he gets crushed in this game. After the very common move, Bishop G7, it allows us to play E4, getting 2 pawns in the center of the board. And this is why we moved our knight to C3. It supports this strong center. And we have some very simple and very dangerous attacking plans from this position. Now, first of all, this position may resemble a perk. It does resemble a perk, but it has some distinct differences. In the perk, bishop to F4 is not really a common move. But now just to show you what I mean by this, the perk is an opening where Black plays G6 and bishop G7 against E4. There are some subtle differences. So I just want to show you these differences so you understand this position at a deeper level. After E4, to get the perk, Black either has to go D6 or G6. Black can't go knight to F6 because that's the Alekhine. That would allow E5. Now, if Black plays the move G6, we can go D4, bishop G7. And after we go knight to c3 in this position, again, black does not play knight to f6 here because this is always met by e5. In the perk, black plays the move d6. Now, the subtle difference here is you can see that the knight is still on the g8 square. So if we try to put our bishop on f4 now, this is actually a little bit different to what we're looking at. Why is it different? Because the knight is not on f6, so the knight is not blocking the bishop. And that bishop now has more control on the e5 square. So in this position, in actual fact, I don't like bishop to f4 because black can try to arrange the move e5. Remember, this is a move we're trying to stop in very simple fashion. Maybe he can even play it straight away here. But I also like a move along the lines of knight d7. And he's going to play e5 next. And when he does, that pawn break will attack our bishop and we lose the tempo. Now let's compare this to what we're playing. We're playing after bishop f4, g6, e4, and only now does black play d6. The difference is it's a lot harder for black to play e5. So this is an important thing to realize. Okay, so what should we do here? What are our plans? Well, we've got to combine our own plans with stopping our enemies' plans as well. Now, our own plans is very simple. We want to go queen d2 and castle queenside. Let's play aggressively. It's much more fun that way. And once we've done that, as I said earlier, we want to stop e5, always remember that move, or make it difficult for black to play that move. But my basic plan is queen d2, castles queenside, h4, h5, take on g6, open up the h-file, checkmate, thank you very much, job done, easy, easy peasy. That's our plan. So, for example, queen d2. Let's just see how this could play out. Now, again, if black is half asleep here and plays a move like castles kingside, we should be rubbing our hands in joy because now we can simply go castles queenside, and I believe our attack as white is extremely strong. We're going to go bishop to h6 and just push Harry up the board. Come on, Harry. So, for example, let's say here black doesn't play, which I consider the best move, knight to c6. I think this is correct. But let's say he plays something slow like c6. Well, let's just get on with the attack. We can either go bishop h6 first or h4. I'd probably go bishop h6 first because this stops black playing the move h5. It blocks that pawn in. If we go h4 first, maybe black can consider h5 himself. So in this kind of position, we should just attack. I'm just going to show the standard attacking plan. Bishop to h6. Okay, maybe black goes b5. And again, when your opponent plays a move in chess, you've got to see what his idea is. His idea is to go b4 and take on e4. We should stop that. Two ways of doing so. We can either go bishop d3 to defend our pawn or f3. I think they're both very decent. Let's say f3. And now, well, here, if something along the lines of knight b d7, h4. And just look how quickly this attack is going to come. Let's say black plays knight b6. These are maybe not the best moves from black, but I just want to demonstrate your plan. Harry 5. And already, this is probably winning for white. If knight takes h5, this is such a typical idea. Rook takes h5, pawn takes rook, queen g5, checkmate, next move. Very powerful. And if black doesn't play this, what else can black do here? Well, let's say he plays a move like a5, just to demonstrate this point of this attack. At the right moment, we're going to exchange on g7, exchange on g6, and bring our queen into h6. Maybe even now. So bishop takes g7, king takes, pawn takes g6, probably f takes is forced, queen h6 check, the king has to move, and now there's only one piece defending h7, e5. So this is our general attacking plan if black just falls asleep and he doesn't really do anything to stop our ideas. And this is something I believe you'll get a lot of. Queen d2, castles, and checkmate. Very simple. So if black plays passively, do remember that plan. Now, Grischuk, again, we know he's one of the strongest players in the world, played knight to c6 here. And this is a much better move, in my opinion, because at least black is trying to do something in the center. It's a lot quicker than those other slow plans we just looked at. Now here, I would simply go castles queenside. because we are at the moment stopping the move e5 because we take on e5 and we have this almighty pressure along the d file. Now, ex-FIDE world champion Ponomaryov defeated Maxime Legrov with knight to f3. And this is a very decent move at some point. And you could play in this fashion with the idea after bishop g4 of just going d5. And I think this is a very simple way of playing. And the point here is after knight b8, knight d4. And we have a very pleasant position. But I actually prefer to meet knight to c6 with castles queenside because it fits into our strategy a lot better. Now, what can black do here? Well, black really needs to try and play e5. Now, there's no tactics with knight takes d4. This is actually a move that a grandmaster played against me in a 3-minute game, which was shocking. And after queen takes d4, e5, I think he had a horrible realization that I could simply go bishop takes e5, and I've just won a piece. And he had to resign here because, again, we see the power of having this d file. I don't think that grandmaster was very happy. So black can't rely on any tactics like this. Grischuk castled kingside. And here, the move I'd recommend now, and I, as a rule, would do this when black plays knight to c6. Bishop h6 is playable, and you might want to experiment with this idea as we saw before, but I just want to stop black's plan first. There's no rush to get our good plan in of checkmate. We want to stop black from breaking out. So bishop h6 is okay, but a very logical move is to develop a piece, what can be wrong with that, and control the e5 square. And the move knight to f3 is very logical, very simple, and there's nothing wrong with the simple moves, controlling this e5 square. And again, black can't play e5 because we have too many pieces on that square. What can black do? Well, bishop g4 looks like the only logical move, developing the final piece, and again, trying to play e5. And now we see the position we started with. We're trying to stop e5. We don't need to rush with bishop h6. Let's open our rook against the queen. So queen e3. This stops e5 because we take on e5. And now you can see this discovered attack against the queen. It was my dad who once told me that you can never go wrong with lining up your rook against your opponent's queen, because at some moment things might open up to your advantage. So queen e3 is a very clever move, very subtle move, and it's worth pointing out that we're keeping this double power so we can play bishop h6 later on. Now, Grischuk really struggling to find a plan here as black. I want to point out one more thing as well. If black ever takes on f3, I would always take with the g-pawn, doubling my own pawns. Now, why would I do this? Well, number one is I'm going to attack with h4, h5 at some point. So in this kind of structure, I have a g file I might want to attack along. That could help me. And in actual fact, double pawns, like I say, can be a strength. And the pawn on f3 supports the pawn on e4. And this could be very useful. So that's another little rule to bear in mind. But after queen e3, let's just see how the game went, because it demonstrates all these ideas perfectly. Knight d7. So black insisting on playing e5. And as we saw, very crafty move now from white. Bishop g5, making that e-pawn, trying to glue it to the board. And again, given time, white will... if I was white here, I'd probably play h3, force the exchange, and then push my h-pawn very slowly up the board. I may even just play quietly and develop my bishop on f1. There's no rush here. Black, on the other hand, is cramped, is struggling for a plan. He played queen e8, so his e-pawn can move, but now he loses control of the c7 square. So now we go back to one of the first ideas I demonstrated to you guys. Bishop h6. It's nearly always a good idea to get rid of black's dark square bishop because he loses control of his king side. And he loses, really, a good protector for his king and a good attacker against your king. So a great exchange. Here, Grischuk decided to take on f3. Remember the rule, we take with a pawn. And now, eventually, he got his e5 move in. Another little rule, I'm trying to bring out a lot of rules here, but hopefully you remember most of them. When black does play e5, if black eventually gets this move in, there's a simple way for you to deal with this. And I always propose in these positions that you capture on e5. Now, it looks very natural instead of capturing to go pawn to d5 to gain space and kick this knight away on c6. But this is the kind of thing that black might want because you close the position down. On the other hand, I want to open up the position. This pawn structure here is locked. Maybe black can go into d4 as well. But later on, he's going to play f5 and start typical counterplay on that area of the board. So as a rule, once you've made it very hard for black to play e5, that's a good way of playing, obviously. But once he does play e5, you should take on e5. And now in this position, what does black recapture with? Well, if he recaptures with his pawn, I think we start our typical attack with Harry 4. Off we go, h4. Maybe even knight d5 was a good move there as well. Lots of tempting moves. Grishchuk instead decided to take with the queen on e5, but now a very strong move, knight to d5. And this leaves black in an awful predicament because we are threatening to capture the pawn on c7, but also we're threatening to play f4. Note these powerful double pawns, pushing the queen away, and that will weaken the long diagonal. Again, note how swapping off the dark square bishops has helped us achieve this goal. So if black does defend the c-pawn with something like rook c8, we would simply go f4. Where does the queen go? It hasn't got a good square, and there's a lot of tempting moves here. I'd be tempted to play a move like queen to c3 check, and now I could use both of my pawns by going f3, and here, very nice position. f5's coming next. I have a ready-made attack here, and I think black is probably close to losing in this position. So the game continued, knight to f6, but here Mamedov just simply played knight takes c7, and his knight came back, and he's won a free pawn, and of course that's going to be enough to win the game, and he went on to win the game, especially at this level. So what do we have to remember? Let's go over the key points. Well, the key points are when g6 is played, you play knight to c3. If you're able to, you should play e4. This is a key idea. And then once you've done this, you aim to castle queenside, queen d2, castles queenside. And whilst you're continuing with your plan of bishop h6 and h4, if black plays knight to c6, you're trying to stop e5. If he doesn't play knight to c6, I'd be more in a rush as white to play bishop h6 and checkmate. But here, just stop e5, as we're doing. Make it difficult for e5 to be played. Make it more difficult. When the timing's right, swap off those dark square bishops, and you get a fantastic attacking game. So I hope you enjoyed that video. There's only one more video in the London system to go. I mean, obviously, if you guys want more in-depth look at it, I can make some more videos for you, but I also don't want to overcomplicate things. You know, it's a simple opening, and I want us to be lazy. Seven opening videos is enough. Until next time, goodbye.